Judge Amara Thompson, 42, was a pillar of Birmingham's legal community. Appointed to the circuit court in 2022, she'd earned a reputation for fairness, intellect, and an unflinching commitment to justice. A Birmingham native, she'd risen from humble beginnings, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a mechanic, to graduate from Howard University Law School. Her courtroom was known for its decorum, but on July 25, 2025, that decorum shattered in an instant. Detective Michael Warwick was testifying in a high-profile drug trafficking case. The defendant, a 29-year-old black man named Darius Coleman, faced charges of distributing fentanyl, based largely on Warwick's investigation. Warwick, 46, was a seasoned detective with a record of commendations but also a trail of complaints, most alleging racial bias in his arrests. Judge Thompson had questioned his methods before, noting inconsistencies in his reports during pretrial hearings. Her scrutiny irritated Warwick, who saw it as a challenge to his authority. The trial was in its fourth day, with the prosecution building its case around Warwick's testimony. He'd claimed to have witnessed Coleman selling drugs in a sting operation, supported by grainy surveillance footage and a confidential informant. But Thompson pressed him on the stand, her questions sharp and methodical. "Detective Warwick," she asked, "can you explain why your report omits the informant's history of providing false tips in prior cases?" Warwick's jaw tightened, his answers curt. "The informant was reliable," he insisted, his tone clipped. Thompson didn't relent. She pointed to discrepancies in the footage timestamps and asked why Warwick's body camera was off during the alleged buy. The courtroom was tense, the jury attentive. Warwick's frustration grew, his face reddening. He muttered something under his breath, inaudible to most but caught by the court reporter. Thompson paused, her eyes narrowing. "Detective, repeat what you just said for the record." Warwick smirked, leaning forward. "I said you're out of line, Judge." The room gasped, but Thompson remained composed. "You're here to answer questions, not pass judgment," she said firmly. What happened next stunned everyone. Warwick stood, his voice rising. "You think you can sit up there and grill me? You're nothing but—" He cut himself off, but the racial slur he'd whispered earlier hung in the air. Before anyone could react, he stepped toward the bench, his anger boiling over, and kicked Thompson's chair, striking her shin. The judge winced, gripping the bench to steady herself. The bailiff, a burly officer named Greg Harris, tackled Warwick to the ground, cuffing him as the courtroom erupted in chaos. Spectators shouted, the jury recoiled, and the defense attorney, Lisa Grant, leaped to her feet, demanding a mistrial. Thompson, despite the pain, maintained control. "Order," she called, her voice steady but commanding. "Remove Detective Warwick from my courtroom." Harris dragged Warwick out, his shouts of "this isn't over" echoing. Thompson adjourned the session, limping slightly as she left the bench. Paramedics were called to check her injury, a bruised shin, painful but not severe. The incident, captured by courtroom cameras, spread like wildfire online, with clips showing Warwick's outburst and the racial undertones of his behavior. By evening, Birmingham was in an uproar. Local news outlets aired the footage, and social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForJudge Thompson. Community leaders, including Reverend Marcus Tate of the Birmingham NAACP, called for Warwick's immediate termination and criminal charges. "This was not just an attack on a judge," Tate said at a press conference. "It was a racist assault on a black woman in power." Protests formed outside the police station, demanding accountability. Warwick was suspended without pay that night, pending an internal affairs investigation. The Birmingham Police Department issued a statement condemning his actions, but it did little to quell public outrage. Thompson, known for her restraint, released a brief statement through her clerk. "I am shaken but not broken. Justice will prevail, as it always must." Her words, calm yet resolute, only fueled the public's admiration for her. The fallout was swift. On July 26, 2025, Warwick was charged with assault and battery, a felony given the victim was a sitting judge. Prosecutors also explored hate crime enhancements, citing the racial slur overheard by the court reporter. The evidence was overwhelming: courtroom footage, witness statements, and Warwick's own history of complaints, which included racially charged remarks documented in prior disciplinary reviews. His personnel file, obtained by a local journalist, revealed a pattern: 12 complaints over 15 years, 8 involving black suspects or colleagues, with minimal consequences. Warwick's life began to unravel. His wife, Karen, a school administrator, distanced herself, issuing a public apology for his actions. "I don't recognize the man I saw in that courtroom," she said in a statement. Their 2 teenage sons, already estranged due to Warwick's long hours, refused to speak to him. Neighbors in their suburban community shunned him, and his address was leaked online, forcing him to relocate temporarily for safety. His union defended his right to due process, but stopped short of endorsing his actions, leaving him isolated. The trial against Darius Coleman was declared a mistrial, with Thompson recusing herself to avoid bias claims. A new judge took over, and Coleman's case was reevaluated. Lisa Grant, his attorney, used Warwick's discredit to challenge the evidence, arguing his investigation was tainted by bias. The surveillance footage, already questionable, was thrown out when experts confirmed the timestamps were manipulated. The informant, under pressure, admitted to fabricating details for a reduced sentence in his own case. By August, charges against Coleman were dropped, vindicating Thompson's earlier skepticism. Warwick's own trial began in September 2025. He pleaded not guilty, claiming stress and momentary lapse due to Thompson's hostile questioning. His defense attorney, Paul Dorsey, argued Warwick was a dedicated officer who'd been unfairly targeted by a politically charged court. But the prosecution, led by Assistant DA Sheila Brooks, dismantled his case. The courtroom video was played repeatedly, showing Warwick's unprovoked aggression and the racial slur confirmed by lip-reading experts. Witnesses, including the bailiff and court reporter, testified to his hostility. A former colleague, Officer Jamal Hayes, revealed Warwick's pattern of racist remarks, including calling black suspects thugs in private. The jury, diverse but unified in their outrage, deliberated for just 3 hours. On September 18th, Warwick was convicted of assault, battery, and a hate crime enhancement, facing up to 7 years in prison. At sentencing, Thompson declined to make a victim statement, letting the evidence speak for itself. Warwick, visibly defeated, apologized, but his words rang hollow. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said, his voice flat. The judge sentenced him to 5 years, with parole eligibility in 3, citing the need for accountability in law enforcement. Warwick's conviction was only the beginning. A civil suit, filed by Thompson on behalf of herself and the court, sought damages for emotional distress and punitive measures against the police department for failing to address Warwick's prior complaints. The suit uncovered systemic issues: lax oversight, ignored grievances, and a culture that shielded problematic officers. In December 2025, the city settled for $2.5 million, with funds allocated to community programs and police reform initiatives. Thompson donated her portion to a scholarship fund for Black law students, named after her mentor, Judge Constance Baker Motley. The Birmingham Police Department faced intense scrutiny. The chief resigned under pressure, and a federal review was launched into the department's practices. Warwick's name became synonymous with disgrace, his badge was revoked, and his pension stripped due to the felony conviction. Former colleagues distanced themselves, and his name was removed from department awards. Socially, he was a pariah, barred from local businesses, his reputation in tatters. By early 2026, Warwick was living in a small apartment, jobless and estranged from his family, his life a shadow of what it had been. Judge Thompson, meanwhile, emerged stronger. She returned to the bench, her authority unshaken. Colleagues praised her resilience, and she became a national figure, speaking at conferences on judicial integrity and systemic racism. In a rare interview, she reflected on the incident. "It wasn't about me," she said. "It was about exposing a truth we can't ignore. Power doesn't protect you from prejudice, but principle can overcome it." Her words inspired protests to shift toward policy, better training, stricter oversight, and community-led review boards. The community rallied around Thompson, with vigils and letters of support. Darius Coleman, now free, thanked her publicly, crediting her for questioning the evidence that could have jailed him. Birmingham's Black community, long wary of law enforcement, found hope in her example. Young people, especially, saw her as a symbol of standing firm against injustice. A mural of Thompson, painted in downtown Birmingham, bore the words, "Justice stands tall." Warwick's act of violence, rooted in prejudice, had backfired spectacularly. His career, family, and reputation were gone, replaced by a legacy of shame. The truth, exposed in a courtroom's fleeting moment, ruined him, while elevating Thompson and sparking change that rippled far beyond Birmingham.